Today, Ukrainian officials are saying that they have hit another significant Russian asset, releasing this video of an explosion targeting the $3.7 billion Kerch Bridge, which connects occupied Crimea to Russia. Ukraine's security service says its agents planted more than 2,400 pounds of explosives underwater in an operation that lasted several months. This is the third time that Ukraine has attacked the bridge since the war began, and it comes just 2 days after Ukraine's remarkable spiderweb operation. Remember, Ukraine says that drone attack mission hit 41 long-range bomber jets at multiple air bases, some of them thousands of miles inside of Russia. Joining us now to discuss is retired U.S. Army Major Mike Lyons. Major Lyons, thanks so much for sharing your afternoon with us. So why has this bridge linking Russia and Crimea become such a key target?
Well, it's a major logistical supply chain for the Russians, bringing troops and material inside of Crimea. Crimea is really the reason why this whole invasion started. It's the must-have part of land that is in Ukraine that houses the Black Sea Fleet, the warm water port that the Russian Navy uses to try to project power throughout the world. So Crimea was always the most important aspect there. And this bridge attaches it to Russia proper. And so that's why, as Ukraine has tried to drop it in the past, Russia quickly rebuilds it because it's that important.
As Russian forces are pressing into portions of Ukraine, negotiations are still happening behind the scenes. I wonder what you make of some of the ceasefire options that Russia put forward in its peace memorandum. There are really two options here. Neither of them seem tenable for Kyiv.
No, none of them really are. They're the maximalist objectives that Russia had from the beginning of this war, and they're not acceptable on any level. And as long as the Ukraine government can stay out in front with more creative military tactics like Operation Spiderweb. I mean, just incredible to think this is the first drone swarm we've seen to be effective now. There's this principle of mass that it describes warfare. And in the past, it's been tanks and infantry and aircraft doing certain things. And now Ukraine has brought this new aspect to the table, and that's drones. And what they've done is, from a cheap perspective, is to strike deep into Russia, go after strategic targets, to have a psychological advantage over them right now. So if go back to the negotiations, right now, Ukraine thinks it's got more in the way of keeping this fight going, getting more allies on its side. I think Russia clearly is on its heels right now.
When you talk about the innovative and disruptive nature of that Operation Spiderweb, do you imagine that something like that could be carried out on air bases here in the United States, that someone could take these sort of relatively inexpensive drones and strap them with explosives and just send them in to destroy American planes?
Yeah, absolutely, Boris. No question. I think military planners cleared their desks over the weekend as they saw this take place, and to come up with new and more creative air defense platforms to protect air assets that are on the ground here. In the past, you used to hit a missile with a missile. It was like 1-to-1. But I think you're going to see now, to try to take out one-to-many is much more difficult. But there's no question that we have to be thinking, for example, of Chinese containers that are off the shore of the United States. They could be carrying these kinds of weapons platforms. And I guarantee there'll be more than just 100 of them. What if they deploy 10,000 of them or so? So that's the threat that exists right now. I think, and this is maybe what the president was thinking about with Golden Dome, about trying to protect us, but it's not going to be the one-off ICBM coming in. It's going to be the drone swarm that could come from our enemies, that we've got to be very more creative in this space of how we're going to defend.
Major Mike Lyons, great to get your perspective as always.
Thanks, Boris.
Joining us now for more on this is retired General Wesley Clark. He's the former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. General Clark, always good to see you. It's notable that every time it appears Ukraine is losing on the battlefield, we see some of this ingenious maneuvering, asymmetrical attacks that they impose on Russia, whether it was the attacks on the military bases, taking out, they report 40 of their bomber planes, but even if that number is in the dozens, that is still quite significant. Now this bridge again attacked for the third time, connecting Russia to Crimea. Talk about the impact this has on the Russian military and where things stand at all when it comes towards some peace negotiations.
Well, on the battlefield or beyond it, actually Ukraine's basically holding its own. We know there's a staging of Russian forces in the northeast. We know kind of what the Russian campaign plan would like to see unfold. They would like to see an offensive in the northeast against Kharkiv, drawing in all of the Ukrainian forces up there to defend Kharkiv, and then they would like to make a run for Odessa and take Odessa and lock Ukraine out of its ability to export through the Black Sea. That would be their winning plan, but they're not able to execute that. Now, these other strikes, like the attack on the Kerch Bridge, we haven't seen whether the span has fallen or not, but clearly Russian engineers have got to go in there and they've got to see what the strength of the bridge is, and they're going to put a stop on traffic until they can make an assessment. At the very least, that's helpful logistically. There are other ways that there's a railroad line that's been built that goes directly through Mariupol that can provide logistic support for the Russian forces so they don't have to go through Crimea. But still, this is helpful. The strikes by the drones, it took out a substantial number of Russian aircraft. It's a huge psychological blow to President Putin and to the armed forces. You can be sure that there'll be a lot of people sacked in the security forces and in the armed forces who were supposed to protect these air bases. And there'll be a further tightening of whatever they can do to prevent drones and explosives and wooden boxes from moving around in Russia. But the war is going to continue until Putin understands he cannot win. And so this is why the statement by the NATO Secretary General is so important and why we need strong U.S. leadership. We need the Trump administration to reinforce what the Biden administration was doing with military assistance to Ukraine. Patriot missiles, 155 artillery ammunition, small arms, new technology like lasers to shoot down drones. All of that needs to go in. When Putin realizes he can't win, that's when this war will stop.
Right, so you're saying that essentially what should come of all of this is the Trump administration giving more military aid to Ukraine. One of the things that Zelensky talked about is this idea that, yes, of course, he's trying to send a message to Vladimir Putin, but he is also trying to send a message to Donald Trump as well. This idea that we're not as much of the underdogs as you might think. We can actually do well and we can carry our weight in this war, hoping that perhaps because Donald Trump doesn't see them as potential losers anymore, that maybe he might step up in terms of aid and assistance. I mean, do you think that's going to be really the case here, General?
I think it's certainly the hope that that President Trump and his administration will see that this is not a defeated Ukraine, that providing assistance can help assure security and also give us a stronger position vis-a-vis China in the Pacific. But it remains to be seen. President Trump is very, very reluctant to take any measures against Mr. Putin. There's a big sanctions bill going through Congress. Hopefully it passes, and then it'll be up to President Trump to pull the trigger on it. The thing is, he needs to pull the trigger on something because that's what's missing right now. The statements by lower level officials, that's great. Military exercises in Europe, that's great. But it's really down to President Trump and his credibility. And the credibility in Ukraine is going to carry over to his credibility in dealing with tariffs and dealing with the Chinese threat in the Pacific. So I hope the administration recognizes this, and I certainly hope President Trump will make the right moves to reinforce Ukraine.
What do you think the strategy is going to be going forward? Will Russia, for example, no longer group aircraft together? You know, is that one way to sort of mitigate the risks here?
Well, they've already moved the bombers a long way away. So there's a possibility they can put shelters over the remaining aircraft. That's expensive. It takes a while to do that. They'll certainly tighten up security around the air bases. They'll also put renewed effort on an intelligence offensive inside Ukraine. Imagine, how could this have been done for 18 months and not one word of it leaked to Russia? This will infuriate Mr. Putin. He will demand that his agents in Ukraine produce better results. And so there'll be actions inside Russia like this to tighten up security. But it's not just the aircraft, it's his fleet. His fleet, his Black Sea fleet, is suffering. There's sabotage in the Black Sea fleet. He knows it. He can't get some of these ships out of port. So there's a lot of corruption in the Russian military. And the way it works in Russia, of course, it's not a democracy. So people take whatever actions they think they can get away with. Sugar in the gas tanks of military vehicles, sabotage on ships, can't find the repair parts for aircraft. And so there is a certain dragging of the feet in the Russian military that will probably be intensified after this operation.
All right, General Wesley Clark, always good to see you. Thank you.